Hello there guys, and welcome to Mad.Minis. In this video I'll be continuing my big battleboard build of the Frigate Warspite, inspired by the real life HMS Warspite, a very storied and honourable battleship that won fame across both world wars. So join me for the next instalment as I build some Terminator drop pods. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Terminators don't use drop pods, right? In 40k or 30k or whatever. They deploy normally by a Stormbird or a Thunderhawk, or maybe they're teleported into combat. But here's the thing. I don't really care, and I like the idea of them deploying by drop pod. Moreover, I really like the idea of them using individual or single drop pods, one soldier per pod. So I'm going to do it because I find it interesting and the concept is kind of quite fun to me. And I'd encourage anybody who wants to step outside of the lore and do something that they find interesting to do the same, because at the end of the day, guys, who cares? Do what you enjoy. Do what brings you fun. And great things will happen. So don't be constrained too much by the lore, is my big advice. So here I'm using quite a thick bit of foam board. Now this is 1 centimetre thick, so that's double the thickness of your regular stuff, and that's going to be a nice firm base for this terrain piece. I've got to decide how big I want the thing to be, which is actually quite big at the end. It's quite a large piece, this, and I'm going to measure out and draw out lines on that to try and help guide me where I'm going to put the launch tubes for the drop pods, which I'm going to use a Pringles can to kind of use as a template there, because that's about the size that I need for these tubes. So I kind of draw around that, and this is all, you can't really see very well on the screen, but that's all been pre-measured out and drawn out. And I need 10 because I want there to be enough for 10 Terminators. Obviously you could do far fewer and have a lovely effect still, but I want a lot of them. So this is what I end up with. There you go. You can get a better idea of those guidelines there in that shot. And next up, we've got the long-winded process of cutting all those out. And that has to be done with a very sharp blade, slowly and carefully. For goodness sake, mind your fingers, guys. Don't chop anything off. All right. But anyway, that's not a very fun process, in all honesty, but it was necessary to give it that kind of depth, you know, that feeling of depth. Then I stick the Pringles tube inside the kind of hole that I've just cut out, and I draw around it using a Sharpie, using a trick that I first saw years and years ago on Commissar Gamza's YouTube channel. His trash terrain videos actually really got me into the idea of making my own terrain. So there you go. Thanks, Gamza, if you ever do watch this, which is quite unlikely, I should think. But there you go. Nice straight line around there. We're going to cut that out with a very sharp blade. Go careful, as always, when you're doing this kind of stuff. And there we end up with a little ring, and that's going to go inside that kind of hole there and provide a smoother surface inside and hide that ugly foam core. I have to do that 10 times, of course. Those tubes sit a little bit proud of the foam board, so I'm going to add another layer on around them using granny grating or stitching mesh. So I need to cut that to size and shape. I'm actually going to leave the middle aisle smooth, so I've got to kind of work all that out and where I'm going to do my cuts. And of course I'm going to have to cut out circles again, which is a bit of a pain, but for me it really paid off. It just creates depth, it creates a bit of interest in the piece, you know, so you're not just got great big flat featureless surfaces. But obviously do what you want with your own builds, of course. So here, look, I'm just kind of marking where those circles are with a Sharpie, and then I'm going around that with a very sharp knife again. Okay, lots of caution here. Okay, just go slowly, get a nice even cut. And there we are. That's my first piece. I'm just doing a bit of a tester, and that's the kind of thing that I'm going to end up with. And I've got 3 more of those to do. So you see I've left the center aisle featureless. That's for a reason you'll see later on in the video. So that just helps to bring everything up kind of flush with each other, if you know what I mean. Now I'm putting some hot glue around the rim of each of these tubes just to hold everything in place. The trouble is that does look quite messy. Even if you're quite neat with hot glue, it still looks a bit messy. So what I do then is cut out some rings out of just regular cereal box cardstock, and I kind of glue those down on top of each launch tube. So it's like a kind of rim going around the outside, and that just hides all those sins, basically, all that kind of rough work with the hot glue. So here we are. Here's one of the final ones going on, and I think that just tidies everything up a little bit, personally. So that was worth it, although it was a little bit time consuming. So this is what we're left with at this stage. looking not too bad. And then I make a gantry system out of some shelving brackets, which are wooden, but they're painted, pre-painted, so they're nice and smooth. And I use 2 bits of batten, which I obviously cut down to size and shape. And then I start thinking about how the drop pods will launch. So I get some Lego pieces and a long screw. And these are like kind of wheels really, and I kind of put the screw up through the wheels, just make sure that we've got the correct length of screw to do that, because that needs to go into the batten as well. So that's looking quite good. And because the screw is metal, that's going to help, because I'm going to magnetize my drop pods and they're going to stick on and be detachable. So it's all quite a neat way of doing it. Just checking the length of the screw there, all looking quite good. The drop pods that I use are from a toy range. You know the Lightyear movie? I don't know if any of you watch Disney, but there's a Lightyear movie, Buzz Lightyear movie, and it didn't do very well. It kind of flopped at the box office a little bit, and the toys are going super cheap at the moment. So I got a load of drop pods because they're kind of like, they really ripped off Games Workshop a little bit there. I'm surprised nothing's happened there, knowing Games Workshop and their IP kind of crusade. But they really do look like proper drop pods, these things. So I was quite happy to get those in the toy store. And each time that will stick on one of those little things that I've made there, one of those little holders, if you will, because we got the screw end, which is going to magnetize to the magnet. There we go, stick to the magnet. So that's an easy way of doing that. And incidentally, if you want to pick up some of these pods yourselves, you need to look for something in the toy store that looks like this. So there you are, you know what they look like if you want your own. So at this stage in the build, we've got the main structure down. Everything's looking quite good so far. It's matching the vision that I had in my head, which is great. Just need to make some walkways on top now to make the whole thing playable. I do that with Ruminate parts. Ruminate is a children's toy that isn't really widely available in the UK. I buy it whenever I see it on eBay. I just love this stuff. And I kind of cut that to size and shape. I cut some holes in it for access ladders to go up through at the sides of the gantry and through the walkway. You can see here a big square hole, and those are going to be my end pieces. And that's just all going to get hot glued down on top of that wooden batten. So no finesse there really, that's quite easy. And I just kind of work from the center out when I'm doing that, because I want everything to be as symmetrical as I can manage really. That just, again, is an easy way of enhancing the look. So there we are, they go on very nicely. You need to think about ladders at this stage, so I use the old plastic tennis racket trick to make the ladders. Really cheap and cheerful, but it works, you know. So I create 2 ladders to go up either side of each gantry, and bend the end a little bit, put a little bit of a kink in the end of the ladder just so it can go up through the hole. And I think that looks really, really nice once it's all glued on. So there we are, it's an accessible, playable piece with minimal effort. And it was... it was at this stage in the build that I was getting the munchies really, really bad. So my wife did me a solid and made me an enormous bowl of pasta. Look at that. That's morale in a dish, isn't it? Wow. So yeah, keep your energy levels up, guys, and get a nice hot cup of coffee or tea. Tea in my case, you know. Always has to be a nice cup of tea, and that keeps the morale nice and high and the energy levels charged. So moving on, we're making a central walkway now, and I use a bit of polystyrene, and I stick a piece of large conduit on top of that. It's like the face of a large conduit with kind of solvent-free glue, solvent-free adhesive, and that's just a nice smooth surface on top. Now I kind of think about access to the launching kind of mechanism of the drop pods. So I use these Ruminate pieces and put them across that central walkway that I've made. You can see that the yellow ones stick out a little bit more. That's suggesting access to each pair of pods. And I can just do a little bit of alignment work, take my time here, get measurements right and get them all sorted. A little bit of super glue holds those down once I've finished that. And do a little bit of a test in the middle, and everything's looking quite good. I also chop off the end off the shelf brackets there. You can see that I sawed those off, and that's because I wanted to make the thing a little bit more compact on the tabletop, and that was taking up needless room really, do you know what I mean? So I then kind of coat that central walkway area with some primer. Okay, grey. Everything gets a coat with grey primer, guys. I didn't film all of that. And then I stick some stitching mesh to each section there to give the impression of grated flooring. I then come over that again with some black spray, some matte blacks. That's going to be finished in lead belcher ultimately, so that's a nice base coat for that. I do some extra decoration on the gantry as well to make things look a little bit more realistic and add a little bit more detail. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and remember to like and share and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. And now I'm going to update you on the entire table and where we are. Thanks ever so much for your patience, and I really hope you enjoy the following sequence. Cheers.